Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you about this Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, the COPRA Act. It's kind of a scam that YouTube is running on us. So if you're a YouTube creator, channel creator, unless you live in New York, you don't have to comply by this. And there's like 2 billion YouTube users. And if you're a creator that doesn't live in New York, this was a bill passed by New York. The New York governor or whatever shoved it through. And I know the United Nations created the bill. They like to shove a lot of things through New York or Colorado or through Massachusetts, things like that. And so they like to do that through these certain governors. They have certain governors on their payroll, the United Nations, and they get them to shove these laws through. And they finally got one law shoved through that affects YouTube, kind of like at the EU, things that affect the internet. But this one, unless you live in New York, they make it sound like, YouTube makes it sound like it affects all of us. Like they put this big bar up here for California, not California, but they put this big bar up here. And it says this thing like you have to comply, right? It says by law. By law, you have to comply. And the reason it keeps saying that, but then it doesn't knock you off, is because you have to, it doesn't say the whole thing. It's lying by omission. By law, you have to comply if you're in New York. And so what's happening is I'm watching things like the State Department and things like that. They're actually going ahead and complying, and they're actually complying and saying whether or not their videos are made for kids or not. Well, then the New York law, because it's through the United Nations, once you say that it's for kids, right? If you say it's for kids, if you try to say it's for kids, then all of a sudden they knock it out with mini player. So that means if you try to minimize it on your phone and try to scroll through YouTube while you're watching other videos, you can't actually listen to it. It disables the mini player on your phone, which everybody uses. We all use the mini player on your phone. And so they do this trick. It's not designed to actually protect kids. It's designed as a mode of censorship for people who are actually educating the youth, because, you know, UNESCO and the UN is all about educating the youth for the 1% families that live in Europe. You know, the same families that have been rich since the 1400s, or whatever, the same families of Europe that have been wealthy, the same ones. Like they never got taken. Their wealth was never taken. They've only ever been collecting wealth in Europe. No one's ever taken their wealth from them. They've only been amassing wealth. And so they've been buying our politicians and getting our stuff from us. And so it just says, like, you know, you're legally required to comply with the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPA, and or other laws. You're required to tell us if your videos are made for kids. Use the YouTube Studio, learn more. Well, no, that's only if you live in New York. So I haven't done it. Like, I went and I did it, and then it put all these, like, lockdown, all these things on me. And I was like, I can't do anything with my videos now. And so I went back and I undid it. And what you can do is you can go into your settings and just say that you're going to set it for everyone. Say, I will set per video. I'll do a settings per video. So go into your settings for your channel and just say, I'm going to tell you by each video, I'll tell you each video. So I'll just do the settings for each video and then never do the settings for each video. If you're in New York, it's different, but that law only happened in New York. That's it. So that's the only thing that you have to do it for. That's why it's been saying it for months. And so you're going to just have, the bad thing about it is that you're going to have to see that blue bar forever. But that's not anything to really give up if you keep your censorship rights. Now, you may be saying, oh my gosh, but I saw all these influencers come out and say that I have to comply by these laws. You guys have to remember that influencers work for these royal families up these. They work for the royal families that control the UN. Like, if that's why you always see Prince Harry at the climate change conventions, which is what the climate change conventions, if you look at the climate change conventions, here, I'll show you. All right, so these are the United Nations climate change conferences. You'll see that they benefit, the biggest ones that they benefit, you'll see it very first started in 1995. That's when our wealth gap started. And 1995, the very first one was in Berlin, Germany. That's where the climate change actually is based, in the UNFCCC. It's based in Germany. So the first one is Germany. And look, they have everyone every single year. Every single year they meet, and they just keep meeting all year round. Now, this is just the climate change conference. They have like 3 other kinds of climate change conferences. Now, that may sound like it's about climate change and about emissions, but it's not. I'll show you what they actually meet about. All right, so if you go ahead and look up climate change goals, like what are these climate change goals, all you have to do is scroll down, and you'll see, like right here, it says, Goal 13, global goals. You see this right here? the global goals. It says goal 13, climate action, the global goals. So we say, okay, what are the global goals of climate action? Let's find out what they are. You click on it and look what comes up. Boom. Dear world leaders, we are watching you. And do you see that eye and that thing? Do you see what these eyes are? The rainbow? You see the rainbow everywhere. You see it in videos. You see it in music videos. You see the rainbow. You see it in ties. Like in Parliament, the guy's wearing a rainbow tie. And that's why Verhofstadt says, I really like his colorful ties. I really like that guy. His colorful ties are so great. That's because he wears a rainbow tie. Your gaming things, like your little pods, your gaming, your portals, they always have rainbow. And that's because it's the climate change goal that you see these world leaders are meeting in every single country. They're meeting all over the world every single year, and they're meeting. So if you go through, like, what are all these goals as you scroll through, and you see behind it, now you see that each of these bars and colors, they have a goal behind it, right? Do you see what they are? Like these goals, they say, oh, no poverty, no hunger, no health. Well, when you actually click into this and you start looking into what each of these bars are, you're like, wait a minute, poverty has nothing to do with climate. Health has nothing to do with climate, right? It sounds really good, but all of these are underneath climate. World peace, land and life. It turns out environmentalism is under climate change. Healthcare is under climate change. Education's under climate change. So these world leaders in climate change are meeting for every single aspect of life, including like global armistice, which means every citizen shouldn't have the right to own a gun, and which sounds exactly like the royal families and these kings. That was the whole thing about America breaking away from the kings, was they thought they should have a right to own a gun because only the kings could own a gun. And same thing with healthcare. Like the kings say, we want global healthcare. Everyone should have you can see Queen Elizabeth is reading and she's like, every person will have the right to healthcare because that taxes the citizens to death. It taxes them, and they have, so that's why Sweden has all this, and they're taxed at like 72%. 50% of that goes to the king, though. 50% of the taxes goes to the king. It's a monarchy in Sweden. You can look that up. So that's what these things is. So you look into it. They say, dear world leaders, this is emergency. We're activists for different causes from across the world, writing as one for the first time to demand your immediate action this critical year. Well, that's what they say. They say we're activists or whatever, but then when you look at those meetings, if you look up these climate change conferences to see who these activists are, like if you look up, let's say, climate change conference, Doha, like the one that was in Qatar, right? And you look up images for that. Well, look at these. Do these look like climate change activists to you? They're all world leaders in oil. They're oil barons. They say that they're world leaders and activists, but that's just that. They're all the ambassadors and oil companies and oil cartels from all over the world meeting. And look who's at the leader at the head of the front. It's oil. That's who's heading up the oil cartels. And so you can actually see it in the last 40 years that this climate change conference has been going on. These climate change conferences have been going on. That's these industries, the oil and gas industries. 40 years ago, they were down like this. Since climate change began, look at that. That's the oil and gas companies with Germany. That's how they've jumped in Canada. They own in Canada. And the royal family, the Commonwealth. If you look in the Commonwealth countries that the Queen owns, they were like this because America was big. All their things were, anyway, I could go into it. But my point is, they're the ones making the laws at these climate change conferences, and then they pass it on because we are independent creators and that we're their big scary monster. And they don't want us to do well or speak out. They won't want someone like me to go out and tell you these things. And so what they do is they hire all these influencers to advertise for them and tell you, obey this law, keep your mouth shut. They're always, notice the influencers are always telling you not to speak freely. They're always saying, you know, they say, should we say this word? Should we say that word? And I'm like, what the heck? We live in a free speech country. All words are All words are fine. And they always identify people by their race. We never used to identify people. That was an old concept. We gave that up in the 1800s. You know what I mean? Only the royals ever identified people by their race because they owned slaving ships. We don't do that. Like, we don't do that. We don't do it. So when I see a person on the street, I'm not thinking what color they are. But the influencers do. They're like, oh, how is the black segment doing? And I'm just like, I don't think of America in black. I don't think of the world in black segments. I think of the world, you know, like the way Michael Jackson does. You know, and that's part of the reason I think that they had to take him down, because he was always like, heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me. And then he always said, and the entire human race. And that's not what they do. They see the human race. If you look at all the climate change goals, they actually have a depopulation goal. Look into that, climate change and depopulation. But really what depopulation is about, people all think it's like some kind of eugenics and everything. No, depopulation is really just about the fact that they do slave trading. Like they just did a human trafficking bill in the Trump administration that said 25 million people are being human trafficked right now. And that's because that's part of the open borders policy. They did this big open borders, open migration thing as part of climate change, and that means they can traffic people over the border. And you'll see it in Africa. Read CNN, and they're like, oh, something happened here, so 30 people were moved over the border. They didn't say where. They didn't say what country they were moved into. They just said, so 30,000 Christians were moved over the border, migrated over the border. Well, we're not told where they were moved to. You keep hearing about 30,000 people were just crossed the border, shoved across the border because of ISIS. Well, okay, if you really think, like, so where are they going? And then you hear about work camps down there and slave camps down there. There's incredible amounts of slave trade going on because they have open borders. Borders were created in order to make sure that we watched and made sure no one was actually slave trading across it. But they're like, UN migration, we signed a thing that says there's no borders. That only benefits the slave traders in history. You know what I mean? That's the only benefits one really rich class that's been going on. And they start, like Queen Elizabeth I started the East India Trading Company. That was Queen Elizabeth that did that. 1492, Spanish Armada that came through and wiped out all those Indias. That was Queen Isabella who did that. So it's not like, it's very funny that anything's being put on America, the America who divorced the royals and the divorced the slave trading companies. We're the ones who got away from it, you know what I mean? So you can't believe everything that they tell you on YouTube. You can't believe everything the influencers tell you. You're freer than you think, and you don't have to follow this COPA rule. So have fun. I just undid all my videos, and I just go along and I deal with the big blue bar. So anyway, have fun. Longer video than I thought, but enjoy. All right, love you guys so much. Peace out, and donate down below, please, because obviously I don't have a sponsor. I don't have a royal, you know, paying me. Keep this in mind. If you're a YouTuber, this is how you get paid on YouTube. You only get paid for an advertisement if someone watches an ad for 30 seconds. Someone has to watch an ad for 30 seconds for any YouTuber to get paid. That's the rhetoric right now. That's it. I've never seen an ad on YouTube for 30 seconds. I've never seen a YouTube ad for 30 seconds. Ever. Ever. And you have to see, an influencer has to have so many of those videos to finally get a paycheck. You don't make money on YouTube just getting views. Somebody has to see at least 30 seconds of an ad. No one tells you that. But that's the way it is. So that's the actual rubric. So don't think people are just getting paid by views. That ain't how they're getting paid, baby. They're getting paid by sponsorships. And the FTC does not require them to tell you how they're getting paid, what sponsorships they're getting, why they're getting it. They don't have to tell you anything. They don't have to tell you anything at all. So, like, little things got out and people started saying I'm paid a little bit. But Forbes will tell you on influencers how much they get paid, starting $30,000 for a tweet, 25 grand for a tweet. You know what I mean? So, and there's only one section, one class that can actually pay you that much, and those are people who trade humans. I don't trade humans. So if you could kindly donate down below, just $1 a month. Just $1 a month, that's all I need to keep on going. That's all I need. So we're finally at enough of viewers. I think that $1 a month is perfect. It's working well. So $1 a month, or it's the beginning of the year if you want to pay 12 and just be done for the year. I would really, really appreciate it. It helps me to get my medical bills so I can keep doing this. And yeah, I think I have some cool things coming. I'm going to try and expand on some things so that I can get my body moving more, and I can do more with you guys and interact with you more. I'm kind of excited about it. All right, I love you guys so much. We'll see if that happens. I hope it happens. I don't know. I'm just hoping. All right, bye.